All right, in this lesson we're going to talk about using inverses to solve systems of equations. And if you think about solving this first equation right here, 2x equals 14, in terms of multiplication, if you were using multiplication to solve it, you would multiply by this reciprocal of this 2. So you would multiply by 1/2 on both sides, okay, which is in essence dividing by 2. And so 1/2 times 2 is just 1x, and that's going to equal 7. But we had to multiply by the reciprocal or the inverse on both sides of the equation to get our answer. We're going to apply this same principle to using inverse matrices to solve systems of equations. And when we do that, this is really probably one of the most useful applications for matrices, is to solve systems of equations. And you're going to be able to do all this in your calculator. Now I'm going to assume for this, since I'm not going to show you how to put them in your calculator, that you know how to do that, that you've learned how to enter the matrices and edit them and so forth in the calculator. The way you set these up is we look at these coefficients in front of the x's. And you're going to put in this first column of this matrix right here, you're going to enter this matrix in matrix A, ultimately. And so, in this first column, we're going to put these two numbers, okay, right here in that column. And so what that's going to look like, it's going to be a 4 and a 3, okay? Now in the next one, we're going to put, I'm trying to get a highlighter. We're going to put these numbers, okay, in this column, in the Y column. All right, so what that's going to look like, and let me make that a little darker. See if I can make that a little darker. So it'll show up. I'll mark it in red. We're going to put this number, which is a 3, and a -1. Okay, those are the coefficients. In other words, these are the Y coefficients. And the first ones we used were our X coefficients. Okay? Now in this, you're going to put the variables, X and Y. So this is where you're going to put your variables. You're going to put an X and a Y in this matrix. And in this matrix over here, you're going to put your answers. And so these right here are going to go in that column, the answers. And so those will be, in this case, -4 and -3. Okay, we'll go in that column. And that's the way you're going to set up this matrix every time. Okay? So, let's rewrite those down here. You're going to have 4, 3, 3, -1, x, y. And then over here, you're going to have -4 and -3. Now so we're going to enter this one ultimately in our B matrix in your calculator. Now remember, this is dimensions here. This is a 2 by 1 matrix. And this is a 2 by 2 matrix right here. Okay? Now, what we're going to put in these blank spots that you see right here, we're going to put the inverse of A. This is matrix A. So we're going to put the inverse of matrix A. Now we can calculate that by hand if you're on a 2 by 2 matrix, we're not going to try to do it by hand for a 3 by 3. But if you remember how we do it, just to remind you how to do it by hand, the formula is the inverse is 1 over the determinant of A, and then you're going to set up your new matrix to multiply that by reversing A and D in this case. It would be 1 and negative 4, and changing the signs of the other two, B and C. So those will change the signs. Now, the determinant of A, if you remember, we get by multiplying the diagonals. So 4 times negative 1 is 4, minus 3 times 3 is 9, and so it is negative, that's negative 4. So the answer is negative 13. So this here, this 1 over the determinant of A, is going to be 1 over negative 13. And so then when I multiply, negative 1 times 1 over negative, that's going to be positive 1/13 here, positive 3/13 here, positive 3/13 again in this spot, and negative 4/13 there. Now if you're doing it in your calculator, you're going to call up matrix A, hit the X to the negative 1 button for that. X to the negative 1 button for this one right here. And then enter. Alright, but whatever I do to this side, I have to do to this side. So I'm going to go and over here and I put 1/13, 3/13, 3/13, and negative 4/13. Now, if you remember, this is another if you remember type thing. I want to multiply, since I don't have a lot of space, I want to when you multiply A times its inverse, you get the identity matrix. So what you're going to get when you multiply A times its inverse, really, you get the identity matrix here. And so that, these first two parts, multiply to be identity, you still have your X and Y. But the reason we don't show a bracket or something to put in this spot is when we multiply the identity matrix times this XY matrix, this variable matrix, I want to show you what you're going to get. You're going to get 1 times X plus 0 times Y, and you're going to get 0 times X plus 1 times Y, which multiplies together to be XY. So all of this multiplied just gives you that XY. So that's why really we only write, take away some of this. In this section we're going to only write XY because all of this part multiplied just gives you the variable matrix. Then we're going to multiply these parts here. Now you can multiply by them by hand. Again, you have the skill to do that, and you could do it, or you can put it in your calculator. And what you do, what you're going to multiply is you're going to multiply the inverse of A, remember that's what that is, times matrix B. You're going to put this one in your calculator. We're going to do this one by hand, and then you can do the rest of them in your calculator. That's going to be 1/13 times negative 4 plus 3/13 times negative 3. Okay. That's going to give me what goes in the X spot, which is going to be negative 4/13 minus 9/13, which is negative 13/13 or negative 1. That's going to be your X. Now let's multiply the Y, what will be in the Y spot. that would be this second row times the column, which will be 3/13 times -4, plus -4/13 times -3, which is -12/13 plus (12/13), which is 0. So x is equal to -1 and y is equal to 0. And those are our answers. If you were to graph this, that would be two lines that intersect at the point -1, 0. And that's your solution. Now if you want to write x equals -1 and y equals 0, that's fine to write it that way. Alright, so let's work on the next problem down here. Okay. Set up our matrix, our first matrix. You're going to put 7, -5, 6, 5. Your variable matrix is x, y, equals, and you have 61 and -22. Okay. Now you need to find the inverse. We learned that when we multiply the inverse that we're going to find here times A times the XY matrix, you just end up with XY. So I'm okay if that's all you put on your second line on the left side of the equal sign is the XY. But on the right side, I want you to show me the inverse matrix. Okay. So you need to put that in your calculator. Take a minute, put it in your calculator, and find the inverse. Okay. And what you're going to do then, you're going to set up the inverse here and show that you're multiplying it by 61, -22, and then you're going to write your answer in here and your answer matrix there, which is going to be a 2-by-1 matrix. Now this is a lot of fractions, and remember when you go into do it with your calculator, you're going to need to change it to a fraction. So once you're going to get a bunch of decimals, and so after you do that, you hit math, then the first choice changes it to, hit the math key, first choice changes it to fractions, and then enter. And so you're going to end up with 1/13, 1/13, -6/65, and 7/65. And I want these as fractions, not as decimals, when you show them to me on your work. And your answer is 3 when you multiply -8. Now if you get an error message, you may have entered this B matrix first. Remember, put that in B. This is the inverse of A, and that's what you're multiplying together to get this answer matrix. So you have to enter the inverse first and then times B, or you'll have a dimensional error. Alright, so then you're going to list your solution as a point, or you can say x equals 3 and y equals -8. Either one, either way. Alright, we're going to go to the next page. And the next page we have on the next page we have 3-by-3 matrices, and those are going to be a little more challenging, but the process is the same. It's just that you have more numbers to enter, so you have more numbers to deal with. See if I can get this moved where I want it to be. Okay. So we're going to put our numbers just like we did. All the coefficients, this is an x column, a y column, and a z column, and our variables are x, y, and z. Put our x's all in this first column, the coefficients 3, 2, 1. The y coefficients are 2, -1, and 3. And the z coefficients are -1, 2, and -1. And then put the constants or the answer choices here in this matrix. So we have 11, -3, and 8. Alright, so we're going to enter this into matrix A and this into matrix B. Now, you can rewrite all this, but I'm also going to tell you you don't have to rewrite all that. You can leave that because we know, we've shown you that all of that multiplied together just gives you your variables, because this will multiply to be your identity matrix. And that times your XYZ is going to give you XYZ. So I'm not concerned that you fill all those in. I do want you, though, to show me over here on the right side of the equal sign your inverse matrix right here. That's where I want to see it. And hopefully you can put this in your calculator, change it to fractions, and you should get 5/14, 1/14, -3/14, -2/7, 1/7, 4/7, -1/2, 1/2, 1/2 again, and that's your inverse matrix. And then your matrix B you're going to write in here, which consists of your answers. You multiply these together, and that will give you your answer. And your answer comes up to be 2, 1, and 3. It's a 3 by 1 matrix. And so your answers you can write as a point will be 2, 1, 3. Be sure you write them X, Y, and Z in that order, or you can write X equals 2, Y equals 1, Z equals -3. So take the time, if you have to stop this along, to enter these in your calculator and make sure you can get these same numbers. Now we're going to go do this last problem. This one we don't have the fill in the blanks to fill it in, so let's set it up ourselves. We have -3, -1, 4, 6, 1, -1, 1, -2, 3. Our variable matrix is X, Y, and Z, and that equals 11, -5, and 0. Now all of this here on this side multiplies just to be X, Y, and Z. And then we multiply, we get our inverse. I may need to make this a little bigger. Okay, because it's fractions, it's -1/36, 5/36, 1/12, 19/36, 13/36, -7/12. And then we have 13/36 again, 7/36 and negative 1/12. Okay, it's kind of hard to write all that in. And then again we have our XY, our answer matrix, 11, negative 5, and 0. Okay, so we're going to, this is A, this is our inverse, times, put our answer matrix in B, multiply those two things together, and we find that X, Y, and Z is equal to negative 1, 4, and 3. So we put those in our solution, or X equals negative 1, Y equals 4, and Z equals 3. Okay? So, now take the time again to put these in your calculator, because this is basically calculator work. You may have to, on this first page, go back and do things like this without a calculator, but it'll just be the 2 by 2 matrices that you might have to do by hand.